Today I am going to tell the story of a new most popular movie, whose name is Rise of the Planet of Apes. As the film begins. In San Francisco, Will Rodman, a scientist, had worked at Gen.Sys Laboratories for 5 times on ALZ-112, a genetically finagled retrovirus that could cure Alzheimer's disease. ALZ-112 not only repairs brain cells, but genetically enhances them, giving chimpanzees a mortal position of intelligence. One of his test subjects is Bright Eyes, a womanish chimpanzee that was lately captured from the West African jungle. Important to everyone's shock, Bright Eyes goes on a rage 2 months into her trial, before security is forced to kill her in front of the board members, therefore ruining any chance of developing ALZ-112 further. It's discovered, still, that Bright Eyes' aggression wasn't due to the medicine, but due to her motherly instinct to cover her baby, to whom she had intimately given birth a day or 2 earlier. Will's greedy and unethical administrator, Stephen Jacobs, orders all 12 test chimpanzees put down after Bright Eyes' rage, but Robert Franklin, the chimp tutor responsible for carrying out this order, cannot bring himself to kill the child, and rather gives it to Will, who names him Caesar and raises him at his home. Over the coming 3 times, Caesar inherited his mama's high intelligence due to the medicine, therefore learning at a fast rate. Caesar is suitable to learn sign language with the help of Will and a veterinarian named Caroline Aranya. Will also gives a sample of ALZ-112 to his father, Charles Rodman, who's suffering from Alzheimer's disease. At first his father improves, but 5 times laterally, his body's vulnerable system develops antibodies that fight off the contagion and his madness returns. In his state of madness, Charles gets into an auto and attempts to drive it as the key was carelessly left in the ignition. He presses the gas and hits the buses in front of and behind him, getting the attention of an ill-tempered neighbor, Douglas Hunziker, who threatens Charles. Caesar is advised to the situation and attacks, smelling Hunziker's cutlet out in Charles's defense. After the incident, Caesar is transferred to the San Bruno primate shelter run by John Landon, where the hams are held in coops, except during intervals when they're released into a jungle-themed play area. The hams inside the installation are treated cruelly by Landon's son, Dodge, who works as a guard there. At the primate installation, Caesar starts out being treated inadequately by both Dodge and the other hams, particularly the dominant chimp, Rocket. Despite this, Caesar manages to form a fellowship with Maurice, a former circus orangutan who also knew sign language. Latterly, Dodge brings some callers to the installation. Without caution, the manly caller moves too close to Caesar's pen and is seized by Caesar, having his fund cutter intentionally stolen. Latterly, Caesar ties the fund cutter to a stick and uses it to unlock the door and free himself. He goes into the play den where he frees Buck, a large manly goon, gaining his respect and fellowship. Caesar, with Buck at his side, lures Rocket into the exercise area where he hits Rocket over the head with a Essence gasoline barrel but does no further detriment, establishing his dominance over the hams in the installation. Latterly Caesar steals eyefuls from Dodge and gives them to Rocket. Though tempted to eat them all, he rather gives them to the other hams. Caesar gains the respect and fellowship of Rocket and the other hams. Latterly, Caesar tells Maurice his reason for making Rocket share, hams alone, weak. Hams together, strong, still, pointing to several hams carrying foolishly, Maurice states, hams stupid, which intentionally gives Caesar an idea. Meanwhile, at the laboratory, Will creates a more important contagion called ALZ-113 to further treat his father. New tests begin on 10 chimps, with further latterly taken from the San Bruno installation. The medicine strengthens the intelligence of the hams but is intentionally fatal to humans. While testing the ALZ-113 on a scarred bonobo named Koba, the ultimate manages to expose Franklin to the new contagion, who also begins sneezing blood as a result. Latterly, Franklin is set up dead in his apartment. Will discovers the deadliness of the contagion and attempts to advise Jacobs, but Jacobs insists on pacing with the tests, most specially Koba. Infuriated with Jacobs, Will quits his job at Genesis. Caesar ultimately escapes from the primate installation and peregrination to Will's house, where he steals some drums of an air-borne strain of ALZ 113 and returns to the installation, releasing it throughout the pen area and enhancing the intelligence and internal capabilities of himself and his fellow hams. The coming day, he examines the hams and realizes they're evolved hams like him. With his people now more intelligent, Caesar begins to put another plan into action. That evening, Dodge notices Caesar in the play area when he's not supposed to be. When Dodge tries to get him back into his pen, Caesar shocks everyone by speaking for the first time, yelling "No." Caesar also knocks Dodge out and puts him in a pen before freeing the other hams. The hams substantiation the remaining watchmen, Rodney enter and start beating him until Caesar stops them because Rodney was kind to the hams, rather locking Rodney in a pen. Dodge also wakes up and Caesar sprays him with a sock while his electric cattle prod is turned on, killing him when he tried to attack Caesar again. Caesar also releases Buck and the other hams and escape the installation. Caesar divides his forces in two, with his group making their way to Genesis as he knows some of the Sanctum hams including Lucky and Cornelia are there. Meanwhile, Buck releases the hams at the San Francisco Zoo, successfully leading an escape of hundreds of hams through the thoroughfares of San Francisco, spooking the megacity. The hams also use a trolley to head for their coming target, the Golden Gate Bridge. They plan to cross the ground to get to Muir Woods, but are forced to battle a police leaguer on the ground. Caesar, realizing commodity is over, stops his army and launches a three-rounded plan. Most of the chimpanzees, guided by Koba, bypass the blockage by covering the ground's high line supports. The orangutans and some of the chimpanzees led by Maurice bypass the leaguer by traveling along the bottom supports. The hoods and several other chimps, headed by Caesar, Buck and Rocket defy the blockage directly, going straight across the ground. Caesar has the hoods push a machine in front of the police pellets and steals a police steed. Caesar orders his army to attack, performing a fierce battle. Despite their advanced munitions, the police are defeated by the hams. Still, Jacobs arrives in a copter and Police Chief John Hamill begins plugging down the hams before setting sights on Caesar. Buck offers himself to save Caesar by jumping into the copter. This causes the copter to crash onto the ground, killing everyone except for Jacobs, who's trapped in the wreckage. Koba seizes his chance for vengeance and sends Jacobs falling to his death into the bay below. Most of the hams survive the battle and escape into Muir Woods. Will steals a police auto and follows the hams, arriving at the timber. He calls for Caesar until he's suddenly attacked by Koba. Still, Caesar stops the angry bonobo before he can do any further detriment to Will. Will also warns Caesar that the humans are strong and could do serious detriment to him and his people. He promises to cover Caesar if he only comes home, where it's safe. Caesar, looking upon his followers and now being able of introductory mortal speech, leverages Will and informs him Caesar is home. The surprised Will gives Caesar his blessings and Caesar gives the assurance he'll be safe with his army of hams. The hams make way for Caesar as he climbs atop his favorite tree, where he's joined by Maurice and Rocket on conterminous trees and look over San Francisco, observing the chaos they foisted. A mid-credit scene reveals that Hunziker, who had been infected with the contagion carried by the now-departed Franklin, is an airman. As he walks into the field, he notices his nose is bleeding, but pay no attention to it. A flight board transitions to a flight chart showing a single flight leaving San Francisco. When the graphic traces France, the visual shows air routes raying out from France to metropolises near and far around the world. Each of these destination plates branch out to metropolises across Europe and Asia as flight paths cover the Earth, showing the spread of the simian flu, in which the mortal population is devastated. So, that's the whole movie, friends. I hope you enjoyed the video. So like the video and subscribe my channel for more interesting movies.